Hello and welcome to the Ciao Indigo mini album tutorial series designed for ScrapNCreate.com. In this video, we're going to begin building the base pages for the album. There is a complete supply list in the description box below for all the products on the ScrapNCreate website. So I am using my 8.5 by 11 cardstock. Our pages, we're going to have two different types of pages. We're going to start with our full-size pages. They're going to measure 8.25 by 8.25, but we're going to cut two different size pieces to make our page. So we're going to first trim this to a 9.25. And then we're going to trim this to 8.25. Now on the 9.25 inch side, we're going to score at 1/2 inch and 8.75 of an inch. Then we're going to take a second piece and we're going to cut this down to 8.25, but I'm going to go just a teeny tiny, slightly little bit less. It's not 8 1/8. It's not quite 8.25 though, so just a little tiny bit. I just moved my paper slightly. That way it will not hang over whenever I put my pages together, and I'll show you what I mean in just a minute. And then we're going to do the same thing here, just a little tiny bit less than 8.25. So now on this one, I like to take my scissors and go from the score line, just slightly mitering these corners, because these are going to be pocket pages, and when these are flipped to the back side, it actually allows the photo mat that's in the pocket to slide in and out easier when it's at an angle than whenever it's straight, because it can actually catch on the paper. This is the side that I scored on. I'm going to flip my paper over and I'm going to fold these into the score line. I like to use my bone folder on all of my creases so that they are nice and crisp and lay as flat as possible. And then I'm going to bring my glue in. Going to bring my pieces together. And now, if you see when you lay this piece on here, because you cut this just slightly smaller, the piece will actually lay perfectly on it, where whenever you flip it over, you won't see an overhang. It will actually be hidden behind that piece. So I'm going to go ahead and add my adhesive to my tabs. If you do not feel comfortable doing both of them at once, you can do them one at a time. So it's an easy way to make sure that you can get things lined up perfectly. I'll show you what I mean just so that you can see. If you just put this adhesive on one, line your paper up, make sure everything is straight on all sides, and then press down. So if you don't feel comfortable with the adhesive on both of these, to do this at the same time, doing it this way can be really helpful, especially if you are a beginner and just learning. A lot of times it can be easier that way. Then you just go ahead and open the page up and place adhesive on your second 1/2 inch tab. And then we're going to make sure this is nice and flat and press this down. And now we have our first pocket page. So it will actually go on the album, the hinge, like this. So it will be open for the photo mat. And we are going to go ahead and create 3 more pages exactly the same way, so we have a total of 4 of the larger pages. I have my 4 pocket pages now done for my album, all done in the same way as the very first one. I'm going to go ahead and set those aside for now. I'm going to bring in the 4 smaller of the scrap pieces that we just cut off of those pages, and I'm going to make the smaller half pages. We're going to make 2 of them, so we need 2 pieces for each one. So these measure 8.5 inches. So since our pages are going to be 8.25, I'm going to take this and score at 1/4 of an inch on this one side on all 4 of these pieces. Then I'm going to fold on all of my score lines and use my bone folder just like before so that they're nice and flat. And then I'm going to take 2 of these pieces. I'm going to add my adhesive to this 1/4 inch tab. I'm going to take the next piece on the flat side without the tab, and I'm going to adhere this together. So instead of having one of the pieces with both of the tabs, each of the pieces has 1 tab. I could have cut a piece of paper so that it had 2 tabs on one side, but I actually like to try to use as many of those smaller scraps as I possibly can in my album so that I don't have a lot of waste when I'm building my albums. So you'll see throughout the build that I will use some of those pieces for belly bands or pockets or tuck spots. That way when we're finished, we don't have a lot of extra pieces. So this is going to be where the hinge is, and then the page is actually going to stick in here. So we're gonna have just a smaller half page. It's gonna have some envelopes on it, but it's not going to be a full page. So this is going to be the sleeve that fits in. Then we're going to do the same thing with this one. And as you're doing this, if you have a different type of adhesive you prefer, obviously you can use that. You'll find throughout my album builds that I don't tend to like to use double-sided tape unless I have to, but I know a lot of people swear by it. I've just found that over the years, the albums that I've used it in, the tape has actually started to dry out and come loose, so I don't really like to use it very often unless I have to. And on certain types of paper, like with acetate or with the metallic paper, you kind of have to. I know some people also love art glitter glue. I tend to like tacky glue just because it's cheap and it's easily available, and I feel like it works really well for me. So there are my 2 half pages to go along with my 4 full pages. So these are going to go in the album. So there's going to be 1 full page, a half page, 2 full pages, a half page, and then a full page. So this will be the base pages, and then we're going to start to build them up from here. Next, we're going to build the base for the smaller pages. So we're going to need to cut 1 piece to 7 inches. And then we're going to cut 2 pieces to 4 inches. Next, I'm going to mark in the center at 2 inches on each side, and then I'm going to mark down the side of my page 1.5 inches on both sides. And then I am going to draw lines connecting these. And then we're going to cut these apart. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to slightly round the tip of this so that it's not a sharp edge. You can round it as much as you want, but I just want mine to be slightly rounded. And I'm going to do the same thing for these side corners, just to give it a little bit of a softer feel to it, so that I now have a piece like this. Then I'm going to use this piece to trace onto this next one. Ooh. So now, if I bring my little sleeve in, these are going to set in my sleeve like this. There will be a gap between them, but I will probably put them just a little bit smaller of a gap. So they are going to actually be envelopes. We're going to create the envelope for them, but then the page, the other page, is going to sit behind it, and you'll still see all of this behind that page. We're going to go ahead and cut 2 more pieces like this. So we will be using another piece of cardstock, cutting to 7 inches, and then 2 pieces to measure 4 inches, and then we will use those other ones as a template to create the same exact shape on these 2 pieces. And then we will add the top portion that will be the envelope. I now have my 4 pieces. I did go ahead and erase my pencil marks since this is white and it's pretty easy to see. I'm going to set those aside. And next I'm going to cut a piece to 5 inches. I'm going to score this piece at 1/2 inch and 4.5 inches. Then I'm going to turn this and cut this into 2 pieces that measure 4 inches. Then I'm going to miter corners on one side. And then we're going to fold these down. and then bringing this piece in, we are going to adhere this to the flat side so that there will be a pocket opening here. When you lay this piece down, you want to make sure that those edges that you mitered here are on this side so that things that slide into this pocket will slide in easier. Then we're going to repeat that same thing for the second one. And so we have 2 of our pages for our half page. We're going to need to create 2 more for the other page. So taking that piece that you have already cut, we're going to cut 1 more piece to 5 inches. Score 1/2 inch and 4.5 inches. Then we're going to cut 2 pieces to 4 inches. Miter those corners. Then fold and adhere 1 to each front of these 2 remaining pieces. Now we have all 4 of our smaller envelope pieces done. We're going to add them to our smaller little sleeves that we've made. So how we're going to do this, we're only going to add adhesive to the backs of these pockets where they actually go into the sleeve. So I'm going to line this up so that the bottom edge of this piece is lined up straight here. I'm going to flip this over on the back side and just draw a very small mark. It doesn't have to be all the way around. You just need to know where it is. And then I'm going to stick the second piece in here. Doing the same thing, I'm going to line it up so that the bottom of it is at the edge of this. And now I'm going to flip this one over and mark here. So now I'm going to take these out. I'm going to take my adhesive on the back side and I'm only going to place adhesive in this section here. I'm actually not going to put it all the way up to that line, just slightly below it because I want to be able to tuck some of the decorative paper underneath of that whenever I go to decorate. So I'm going to do these one at a time. I'm going to do this one backwards. Making sure everything is lined up and then adhering this down. Then I'm going to take my second piece and do the same thing. And I'm going to bring this one down to the bottom, lining everything up. And adhering it to the page. So then when I flip this over, it will be open here. That way things can tuck here and into the pocket. This will be the part that will actually go between the hinges. So the hinge will sit between these. So there'll be a small tuck spot and then our pockets. So this is our half page. I'll set that aside. We're going to do the same thing with the second one. Okay, so now we have our 2 half pages and our 4 full pages. So these are going to go, we're going to have a full page, a half page, full page, full page, half page, full page. So this is going to be how we're going to build our album. In the next video, I'm going to start to build up the base page and we're going to go through and start decorating, so stay tuned.